Well, I'll be honest, not all that exciting, but that's all right because these races don't have to be that. These races really are just a matter of who can go out there and lap for 45 minutes. They're around there the best, and right now Harley Lewis has been the best driver on the racetrack. I think Aldous Buchholz has looked fast and certainly has beat on the gearbox a little bit of Harley Lewis, but Harley Lewis has been most consistent. I haven't seen a mistake out of that driver all race long, unless he underfueled his number 4, but that I'm not so sure about that one just yet. We'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. There was a slow car on the outside of turn 4 there. Not sure who that was. It actually was Justin Ford as that damaged double O gets back rolling.
Well, Oldest Spooksless now has to deal with the one thing he's clashed with the past 2 weeks, Scott McIntyre. I was actually in the Laguna Seca race and saw those two clash firsthand. Scott's been very vocal about their clashes as well. He's been very vocal just with Elijah and everybody in the group about clashing with Oldest. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here as Scott actually defends the inside, which is weird. But, very tight. But Oldest is going to get the move around the outside. So no clash this week. It looks like still very close between the two cars on the track.
Right. I think it's still just kind of a gentleman's thing, a respect thing to kind of just still kind of move out of the way. He did kind of defend down low, but maybe he was trying to get out of the way. That's debatable. What this does do for Scott McIntyre, though, he does move into the 6th position there as they went past the double O Justin Ford. So now Scott McIntyre, he's about a third of the track back from Victor Valley, but 6th place right now shouldn't hurt too badly as compared to where he was before.
So it's about a 4.5658 second gap now between 1st and 2nd place. The battle you're watching on your screen, not even for position. Scott McIntyre, I think, just kind of pressuring Aldous Buchholz a little bit, saying, "Hello, I'm here." And I have to wonder if that is actually the message being sent, or if Scott McIntyre is just off in La La Land right now trying to get through the race, because obviously, again, not the best race for him tonight, and I think just wants to get this thing over with. 11 laps to go. It'll be 10 this next time by, and you have to imagine that Scott just wants to leave Lime Rock Park and get this thing over with.
Yeah, I think Scott definitely wants to leave here and get back to his winning ways as soon as possible, but you definitely got to wonder if he's actually trying to send that message to Oldest saying, like, hey, I'm here. I'm just because we can't make contact doesn't mean I'm going to pressure you into a mistake or anything, but it's definitely a cat and mouse game between these two all season.
Yeah, you do want to always keep your presence in your rivals' minds when it comes to racing in general. Just always kind of make them aware that you're there. And actually, Scott McIntyre closing the gap up the crest. Does he have another go at Oldest? That wouldn't be very gentleman-like to do, but I guess not out of ability.
Scott McIntyre all over the gearbox, gives him a shot down the straightaway, bump drafting here at Lime Rock Park. A couple of rivals, and he tried to hit him, I think. I don't know what else you could be doing right there if you're Scott McIntyre. You're laying on the gearbox of the driver down the straightaway, and you stay on him all the way into turn 1. You're either trying to mess with him or trying to hit him, one of the two. There's nothing else you could be doing. Scott McIntyre all over Aldous Buchholz. Now, this is great for us, but this is going to be a nightmare for league admins and these two drivers in particular. You have to wonder what might be being said between them and will be said after the race. Of course, these drivers, considering we're on the iRacing.com simulator, they can talk to each other. They can talk to each other over iRacing chat. They can talk to each other through third-party chats, be it TeamSpeak or whatever else. Whereas, usually the only thing you might have to communicate with the driver would be your right hand, and a certain gesture out the pod here. But they separate for now, so you have to wonder if maybe race control talked them down a little bit, as we now have 7.5 laps to go.
Well, I definitely think if we were able to use hand gestures, then the universal number 1 sign would definitely be coming out of the cockpit of the 666. I'm not so sure if Scott was just kind of egging on Oldest to see if Oldest off track there, so Scott's going to catch back up to him. So it looks like part 2 of this is going to get interesting.
It definitely will. Again, he was right there, and he is being staying in Buchholz's mind, kind of distracting him from what's actually at stake. Now he's about 5 seconds back from Harley Lewis, but he did lock him up getting into one that time. I'm not exactly sure he was trying to hit him, but he was trying to kind of stay there, send a message, because locking up your brakes, generally you're trying not to hit the guy, but who knows? I mean, this could get interesting once again. He'll have the slipstream.
So Scott McIntyre continuing to pressure Aldous Putriclus. Now, Scott McIntyre is 2 laps down. He's 2 laps behind these guys, doesn't have to worry about them, but Scott McIntyre isn't quite about that, it seems. He's definitely trying to pressure his rival. We're just going to say it. If you think back to the old NASCAR games, these two would be seeing red over each other's cars right now, and they've just become rivals over these last few weeks. I think it really starts back at Watkins Glen here, Cole, where they had a bit of a tumble, I guess you could say, entering the boot, with Will Klein and Elijah Grassi involved in that one as well. I think that's really what kind of got this thing started.
Yeah, sorry, I was listening to a message from Elijah there, but yeah, it looked like it started out as the NASCAR 04 rival system where they just made a little contact, got mad at each other, but now it's turned into a full-fledged NASCAR 05 scenario where you can just press X or whatever button it was to intimidate down the straightaway. So definitely intimidation coming into play in this rivalry.
Another thing that just came across my mind is maybe he's not trying to. Obviously, he's not allowed to make contact with Aldous Putriclus, but maybe he can force him into a mistake, force him into an off track where he loses third place or second place to Russ Addy, who's now in third place, or even worse, crashes out, and then the points hit for Scott McIntyre obviously doesn't hurt as much or doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something we had mentioned. He could just be trying to pressure Aldous into literally anything, be it just going off the racetrack a couple of times and getting inside of his head, or completely wrecking that race car, or what have you. So as we come to, that was 4 laps to go. It'll be 3 the next time by. Scott McIntyre definitely making his presence known, even if he is 2 laps down. And I go over to the points on my own screen here, my own monitor. These two are top 2 in the points. Russ Addy currently 3rd. That being said, they're separated by some 24 points, and that margin going to widen as Aldous Putriclus does lead Scott McIntyre in the point standings by 24 points and currently runs, 5 positions ahead of him and 2 laps ahead of him. So that margin only going to get wider.
Yeah, definitely. And we only have 5 races after tonight, and we will cap off this season at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so that's going to be an interesting one, especially if these two take it all the way to the wire, because both of these guys, not really known for their oval racing, but they're more well known for how well they race these cars on the road courses, so it'll be interesting to see that fight being taken to the historic oval of Indianapolis, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how this plays out over the weeks. I believe Aldous has a 25-point gap currently over, or 24-point gap over Scott McIntyre. So Aldous definitely wants to grow that gap over the next 2 or 3 races.
Another thing, entering tonight, Putriclus has had a 39-point gap over Russ Addy. If these two start to tangle throughout the rest of these races, Russ Addy could become a prime contender in this season.
Absolutely, and we talk about some future races coming up for this series, and Iowa Speedway going to come up next week for 100 laps, in 2 weeks for 100 laps. And then as we have our first race of June for the Pro F2000 series, we'll head to Montreal, up in Canada, for the Montreal Grand Prix around Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. A couple of weeks after that, we'll of course go down to Sebring for round number 13 of 15 in this very long championship over the course of 30 weeks for both the Pro Mazdas and the Indy cars. Of course, alternating each week. We've missed the last few Pro Mazda weeks, as it were, but we've been here for all of the IndyCar races as we come to the white flag that time by Harley Lewis takes the white flag. We'll stay on this battle right now with Aldous Putriclus and Scott McIntyre so close to each other. But after Sebring, the last 2 rounds of the Pro Mazdas will be Road America, a draft battle of a 4-mile racetrack, and Indianapolis, where you already mentioned, Cole. That'll also be its own little draft battle, and that'll be a show, honestly. We had the Indy cars there not too long ago, and that was Kind of a mess, a lot of cautions, but it was still really good racing while we were green, and it's going to be even better with these Pro Mazdas. Now across the line, out of the downhill, out of the final corner, Harley Lewis going to make it 3 in a row. Harley Lewis wins at Lime Rock Park.
Oldest Puticle is going to take second. Scott McIntyre being the first lap car across the line. I believe he will take the 6th position. Third place, I believe, is going to go to Russ Addy, as we only had 3 cars there at the stripe on the lead lap. Elijah Garcia comes home 4th. So just a bit of a spaced out race this week, but it was definitely an interesting one for sure.
Definitely interesting, as Victor Valley, he'll come across the start-finish line 1 lap down in the 5th position. He'll round out the top 5. Yeah, definitely very interesting. Again, it's just a product of this track just being so difficult but so fast. You kind of don't think of it as being a difficult one just kind of by looking at it like on a map. You think, oh, that seems pretty simple. No, these drivers, they're very talented, and they had a hard time here today. Again, 3 cars on the lead lap.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and run down through your results real quick. Of course, Harley Lewis, we mentioned, winning this race over Oldest Puticle, about 5.6 seconds between those two. So we thought Harley may have underfueled his car. Not at all the case. He ends up coming home with an even larger gap than he re-entered the racetrack with. Russ Addy comes home 3rd. Elijah Gracia 1 lap down in 4th. And it's Victor Valley 1 lap down in 5th, Cole.
Yeah, and then 6th place is going to go to Scott McIntyre, as we mentioned before. Justin Ford brings home the number 00 Atari car in 7th. Mark Bredbender is going to round out the 8th position. Ian Wilson 9th. Daniel Falkingham is top 10 and the first-year retirees.
Rounding out the list of retirees, we have 11th position Spencer Madden, followed by Brian Antonio in 12th, Donald Poole 13th, Richard Cologne 14th, Tom Mercier 15th, and John Morgan 16th. He'll round out the finishing order here at Lime Rock Park.
So as things wrap up here from Lime Rock, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to you with interviews from your top finishers. We've already got Harley Lewis and Oldest Puticle to talk to. We'll be talking to a 3rd driver as well. Make sure you stay tuned for that, as this is Pit Stop TV with our live coverage tonight of the SRCA Pro F2000 series from Lime Rock Park. We'll be right back to you after this short break. And welcome back to the Lime Rock Park. This is post-race coverage now of the SRCA Pro F2000 series, and we have 3 drivers to talk to. They've been waiting on us so kindly for the last few minutes. We're going to start off with race winner Harley Lewis. Harley, do you have a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Harley, just what a race. You know, I was thinking back. We haven't been here for a few weeks, so unfortunately, I've missed your last couple of wins, but I was thinking back to Mid-Ohio as the last race where I really saw you as a breakout contender. Now tonight, you show yourself to your third, to my understanding, third consecutive win here in the Pro Mazda Series, and a pretty dominating win, too. You were battling there with Oldest for about 40 laps, but then after the pit stop, you just set sail.
Yeah, I kind of had a little bit of pace left in the tank, but there's no point of risking it. Coming to the top of that hill, really easy to unbalance the car, and it's quite fatal. So once, unfortunately, he made a mistake, I just went hammer down. Luckily, it was opening a pretty good gap, and then I guess I gained a second in the pit as well, which was complete luck. Pretty good around this track, though. With the chicane version, I believe I have the world record for the lap, so I'm pretty familiar with the track anyway.
Well, definitely, if you're holding a world record around any configuration of this place, you certainly have it figured out to a point. And you showed that tonight. Of course, you've been one of the top contenders all season here in the Pro F2000 series, but tonight really putting on a clinic, and it sounds like the last few weeks, over the last few road courses, I think Laguna Seca, Road Atlanta, and now here at Lime Rock Park, just putting on a show.
Yeah, not too bad anyways. There's some pretty good competition at the front with Scott and Aldous now. It's kind of going a little bit back and forth, but there's some good battles.
Yeah, so actually from somebody who's not even involved in that, we were talking about that most of the evening because that was really the biggest headline to talk about between Aldous Puigdeclis and Scott McIntyre. As a third party who's not even involved, what's your outlook on that situation?
I don't know too much about what's going on. I mean, it's just racing, you know. Everyone's going to think, you know, they were done wrong. You know, there's always pointing the blame. I've been involved in that too. It just happens. Hopefully, they could bury the hatchet and we can just get back to some clean racing.
Well, you had a pretty clean green run tonight, leading, I believe, all 60 laps, maybe sans 1 or 2 over the course of that pit stop, but I think you even led those. So, firstly, again, congratulations. But as we look to Iowa, how do you feel about Iowa next week, 100 laps, or sorry, in 2 weeks, 100 laps on tap?
How do I feel about Iowa? I have a feeling Rick Raven will show up and dominate us. I'll be lucky to finish, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully you will finish out of Iowa. Again, 100 laps on tap in a couple of weeks for this series. But before we get there, who do you have to thank for your big win tonight?
Well, thanks to Elijah for putting on the league, you guys for broadcasting the race, and as always, Carbon Racing.
All right, so that is now 5-time winner Harley Lewis after his big win tonight at Lime Rock Park. Cole Fralick, I believe you've got our Latvian, Oldest Puigdeclis, on tap.
Yes, I do. Oldest, you got a copy.
Yes, I do, mate.
Well, it was a good race for you. Take us through how you got that second place finish.
Well, the best guy won this time, I couldn't do anything with Harley, really. He was faster and I was just holding back, it wasn't really pushing, because, to be honest, when I saw this track on a calendar, I knew it will be barely, basically impossible to pass, because this is too short of a lap to pass properly. The straight is not long enough, and if both cars know what they are doing, and that turn 1 is basically no pass zone there.
Well, we saw you kind of have a little clash there with Scott McIntyre, and before the race, we were informed, you two were informed to stay away from each other, so do you know what the whole deal there was, or just he was just trying to get in your head or something?
Drivers have some misunderstandings and stuff, like me and Harley had some misunderstandings, but I guess we both are grown-ups at least, and Scott is basically too salty to admit his own mistakes, so he just wanted to kill me, and that's what it was. I was braking after first board, so you couldn't brake any later, and he ended up still half a car in my car, so
Well, looking towards Iowa, what's going to be the plan there? Because you said yourself you need to get a little bit better on ovals, so is that going to be the game plan going into Iowa, or are you going to just try to go for the win as usual?
Well, we'll see, because when I was racing the old Dallara, the very old one, the first one, that Iowa was my favorite track, so I really loved it because this crossover taking was amazing. It all depends really on the setup on this one. If the crossover take will work, I will be fighting for the win, I think.
All right. Well, before we let you go here, who do you got to thank for your second place run here tonight?
I will thank Elijah for the league, you guys for broadcasting, Harley for racing clean, and our team Kinetic Racing.
All right. Well, thank you, Oldest. That was your second place finisher tonight, and I believe Emerson, you're going to actually be interviewing Justin Ford, who finished P7 tonight.
I should be. Let's see. All right. Hey, Justin, you got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
All right. So P7 tonight, but talk to us about your journey. You started P15 or P16 on the grid, and you went up. You're halfway through the field. So how did you get up to the 7th position tonight?
I just tried not to drive off into the grass too much, which I did quite a few times, unfortunately. But it was pretty much about keeping it off the wall, not dying up the hill, and just letting everybody else take themselves out for me.
All right, that's gonna be my next thing. What is what was it kind of like? Kind of seeing your competition drop like flies left and right of you, physically and figuratively.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of stressful when they bounce out in front of you and stuff. But it was actually kind of just fun because then everybody else is making mistakes. So as long as you kind of just keep your pace, you'll make it through.
What was the strategy for you today? As far as your what was it? One pit stop? I don't assume you would take a second one. If you did, what would it be? What would it had been for? And just your take on the strategy here today.
Yeah, you only really needed the one pit stop, so it was pretty straightforward. I'm just going to keep running as long as I can with fuel, and then just kind of pit towards the end and see how it plays out.
Was there anything else you could have done from your point of view to maybe improve your position, maybe get Scott or Victor there at the end?
Yeah, I definitely made a few mental mistakes. Like in the first corner, you really shouldn't mess up there, and every now and then I would just get a little wide, and then once you get wide there, it's onto the grass, and it's a ways away for you.
Right. Is there anybody you'd like to thank for your opportunity to race in this series, your 7th place finish tonight? It was quite a run up through the grid, I might say. Anybody to thank for that?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for hosting this and broadcasting. It's awesome, and Elijah for running the league, and definitely just want to, thank the woman for race night privileges and stuff like that. It's been fun, and I enjoy it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on your 7th place finish here tonight, and good luck to you in your next race.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Have a great night, guys.
And so that was Harley Lewis finishing 7th place, and so that's your top 2 finishers, then your 7th place finisher, getting an idea of how things went on down the grid. And I'll tell you what, that was a perfect interview, I think, out of all the Spooderclips. No matter whose side you're on, that's great to hear that kind of emotion out of this series and start to get that kind of drama going on. And of course, these road races sometimes get so spread out, you don't usually get that kind of drama going on. But that's great to hear that we've got something stirring up, at least for us and everybody watching. Of course, for these drivers, it might be a nightmare. For race control, it might be kind of a nightmare, but Aldis definitely, I think, laid his thoughts out on the table. Hopefully soon we can talk to Scott McIntyre, hear his side of the story. Maybe even Russ Addy, being he's teammates with Scott McIntyre there, and I'm sure he's got his own opinions to go along with everybody else. So definitely, I think pretty nice to have that kind of turn in action there, Cole.
Yeah, all of these guys, Harley Lewis, Oldest Puticlus, Russ Addy, and Scott McIntyre, they all race official Pro Mazda 4 points. So really, they are used to racing each other. But when it comes to this series, and Oldest, like he said, he clashed with Harley last season, I believe. But they've made up, and Oldest, I don't know what Scott's got against him, what vendetta's happening, but it's been an interesting one to see how this has played out, as they've clashed 2 of the past 3 weeks. Didn't really clash tonight. In a way, they kind of did, but it was just a little shove down the straightaway compared to the last 2 weeks, which resulted in, I believe, both cars getting damaged in the last 2 wrecks. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. As far as for me, this is my first time witnessing kind of this tangling between Puticlus and McIntyre. But what I did see today is that even when McIntyre being 2 laps down, he still had like the mentality to still just kind of mess with Puniclus. That kind of shows just how much they're in each other's heads. That even being 2 laps down out of contention, not even battling for position, you're still there just trying to get anything you can to ruin his day.
Absolutely. So that will conclude our coverage tonight of the SRCA Pro F2000 series from Lime Rock Park. Pit Stop TV, thanks to you for tuning in and joining us for tonight's action, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Join us next Tuesday, actually this coming Tuesday, as we head to Road America with the Lucky Dog Sim Racing League, and next Thursday when the SRCA IndyCar World Series comes back to action, I believe at Pocono it should be. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/pitstoptv. That's one of our streaming platforms. You can also follow us over on Twitter at pitstoptv_, on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/pit_stop_TV. Another one of our streaming platforms, and our final streaming platform, at least for right now, YouTube, by searching Pit Stop TV. This has been Cole Freilich and Emerson Ardon with me on the call tonight. I'm Andrew Cardinale IV for Pit Stop TV, and we will see you next time here on the channel.